Why isn't spelling important? Or why is spelling important? What do you think? Which is it? Greetings, colleagues. I'm Timothy Barrett, and welcome to the 4 Business English Rundown. This is the show for people from all over the world who want to improve their professional communication skills in English. Today we're going to talk about spelling and its importance. So what do you think? Is spelling important? Before we get started, why don't you vote in the chat below? Tell me yes, it's important, or no, it's not important. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are. Now, I'm a big attention to detail person. I like paying attention to details. I expect it from my colleagues, and I really demand it from my subordinates, so anyone who's working for me. But I'll be honest, I don't think spelling is important or as important as it once was. Why? Because we live in the 21st century. We have spell check. I think in the last 20 years, my spelling has gotten a lot worse because I normally don't need to know how to spell. I mean, if I get it kind of close, spell check is going to correct it for me. Sometimes it gets it wrong and I have to fix it anyway. But most of the time, I don't really need to know how to spell every word that I type, every word that I use, because I can find out, I can figure it out as I'm typing. Now, I think before computers, before spell check, spelling was important. If I get sent a letter, an email, or a handwritten note, handwritten card, and it's full of spelling errors, I'm not going to be impressed with the person who wrote it. I'm going to think, what the heck is going on? I'll be honest, when I was younger and starting out in the working field, I have seen that. I remember reading some notes from my boss and barely being able to understand what they wrote. I mean, the handwriting was okay, but the spelling was terrible. Like, how is this person my boss? They were very good at other things, just not spelling. Now, in the 21st century, with spell check, I think it's much less important than it was 20 years ago. And if you're learning English, if English is your second language, how much time are you going to spend on spelling versus everything else that you want to learn about English? I don't know that spelling is all that important. Now, I'll put a caveat to that. You have to kind of at least understand how spelling works in English so that you can at least get the right word, so that autocorrect can correct it for you. What does that mean? Well, generally, if you at least know the first 2, 3, 4 letters of the word, then you're good. It's a lot easier for autocorrect to fix it. If you don't know how the word begins, then it can be real tough to kind of fix it later on. So you do have to know some spelling, at least to be in the ballpark. But, there's lots of tricky spelling rules in English. Why is that? Do you know? Well, a lot of it has to do that English is really a melting pot of languages. A lot of the words that we get are from other languages. They're borrowed words. If you ever look at one of those graphs or pie charts, where do English words come from? There's a lot of different languages. English is a Germanic language, so we have a lot of German words. But it's also, England was ruled by Rome, so you have a lot of Latin words. You have a lot of Greek words as well thrown in. And you have a lot of Old English words thrown in. Remember, William the Conqueror was the Duke of Normandy before he became King of England. You had kings and nobles that spoke French, so there's a lot of French influence in English. And all of those different languages have different spelling rules, and so sometimes they can conflict with each other. So that's why spelling can be very tricky in English. I don't think that's ever going to change, so there's nothing we can do about it. Don't get frustrated that, if we should spell it this way instead of that way. You're fighting the sea. You're trying to fight the tide. Don't worry about that. So spelling is important, that you want to learn enough of the word that you can get through the autocorrect. And you don't want to spend a lot of time, correcting your spelling. So because of that, you want to learn some of the spelling anyway. But one thing that I do encourage is before you hit send or before you hit print or save on that Word document, you go through it and you look for those red lines. I do get emails when I was a professor, I would get papers that when I pull them on my computer, I see the red lines. And I know that the student or the coworker, the colleague also could see those red lines, but they didn't bother to just right click on them and fix them. So I think that's a huge mistake. And I find that even more maybe offensive. I don't know if that's really the right word, but more egregious, more damaging to your reputation than if you had a handwritten note that had a couple of spelling errors. Because that you might not have noticed, but the red lines when you type an email, when you type a document, of course you're going to notice, and yet you chose not to fix those. I think that's much worse than having a couple of spelling errors. So if you see those red lines, make sure that you do fix them. You don't need to have perfect spelling when you're typing it, but before that document goes out, it should be spelled perfectly. There shouldn't be any mistakes on it. But what do you think? How important is spelling? Let me know. Right now, it's time to conquer that like button and make it ours. If you enjoyed this video, please watch some of the other videos. I'm sure you'll like them just as much. Work hard today and enjoy tomorrow.